Alright, so this is a little pocket scale from Harbor Freight, one of my favorite places for like random tools. This scale gets really great reviews, by the way. It's a Syntec 93-543. I think it was like $12. The reason I grabbed it is, again, it gets really great reviews. A lot of people seem to like it. So 2.6 grams. 2.6 grams. Really cool pocket scale. It reminds me of those old calculators I used to have that fold up and collapse on themselves. I guess the new ones probably still do that. I just haven't seen a new one. Anyway, so with that said, pull out these screws for the grips. Remember, it's leading edge control. So we're going to put it so that the flat section is up and the curved and thin section is down, pointing towards the front like that. So let me get a little thread lock on here. You can tighten these down fairly snug and still have plenty of freedom of movement of your grips. I like the grips to have just a little bit of tension on them. Just enough to where they'll pretty much fall under their own weight, but you can kind of get them to stay up if you hold them. That's kind of where I like them. See how close that is to being snug, but not quite. That's my preference anyway. So now that we have that one on, this one is going to go in the opposite direction. With the curved piece pointing up as it's pointing backwards. Okay, so basically, as that's a little bit too loose. There we go. So as this thing spins this way, you're always going to have the completely flat side up as it parallels the boom, just like that. So hopefully that makes sense. And hey, we're getting really close to having a tail assembly on the heli. Alright, so now I am ready to tighten up the vertical stabilizer. And I'm just going to continue tightening this down. Basically what I want to do is put some outward pressure on it, pushing with my thumb, so that it's locked in as far away from the heli as I can get it. And then also with the front boom locked into its notch, making sure that everything is fairly upright. And just gradually tighten down both sides, because remember, this is holding the tail case on as well as this stabilizer fin. So once that's done, you still have a little bit of adjustment room in the front of the heli to get that vertical stabilizer where you want it, just because there's a little bit of play in that front notch. So tightening up this is okay. I did not put thread lock on this previously, so I'm going to use the green wicking thread lock. And basically the way this works is you would just apply it to the threads. And it'll just wick down into those threads. You know, I try and give it a second to get in there, and then I'll wipe off the excess. But that's exactly what this thread lock is designed to do. Okay, so that should be good there. Alright, so now that we have that done, we need to set our belt tension and then make sure that we tighten up the front part of the tail boom. So in order to set the belt tension, it's kind of a feel thing. There's not a real finite measurement that you need to be looking for, but what you want is somewhere between too slack, like this is way too slack here. Let me zoom in a little bit more. See how much that gives. It's not a rubber band. It's not stretchy. It's a solid piece of rubber, so it doesn't take a whole lot of adjustment to get it. So what I'm doing is kind of tugging backwards on the belt, and you can see now it's got a little spring in it, but not a lot. You don't want to pull it out really tight and then tighten it down and have a lot of pressure on it. You'll lose some power that way. It's not rocket science, but just get it to the point where you've got a little bit of spring in it. When you put some pressure, it gives fairly easily, but doesn't go all the way through. Remember, this is the too loose adjustment is this, where the thing like completely collapses when you press down on it. So just pull it out until it doesn't collapse on itself, but gives fairly easy with a light touch. And that should be good. Once you have that, then you can go down and start tightening up these front screws. And what I'm going to do is pull these off, put thread lock on these 4 screws on each side, tighten them down, because now I've got the boom in. I don't need to spread them out anymore. And then I'll just double check the final belt tension, make sure my alignment is right on the stabilizer, and then I'll tighten down these last 2 screws with the lock nuts. So I guess with that said, let me first get some thread lock on these guys here. We're to a point that we can double check our belt tension. I also want to line up the vertical stabilizer with the heli, so let me show you that. So if you've got the heli basically sitting pointed face down here, what you want to do is line up that stabilizer fin to where it's in line with the side of the frame of the heli. So let me eyeball this real quick. Actually, that looks pretty darn good right there. So you've got a little free. Let me show you how much movement you do have. But you can see, I can adjust this about that much. So what you want to do is just get it lined up. So I use the frame as a reference guide, and I just want it to be parallel with the frame. If it's cocked off like this, then you can see it doesn't line up. So get it to where it lines up, and I'm basically lining this fin with these frame sides there. So that looks pretty good there. And in the meantime, my belt tension should still be good. If I have any problems, I can always just pull straight back and double check that. Trying not to re-rotate this now that I have it adjusted. But you'll get it, just kind of work with it a little bit. And then once you have that done, just go in and tighten up these 2 screws here. Alright, so got everything set where I want it. Just going to snug down these 2 screws. Again, these are using lock nuts, so there's no need for thread locker. I'll get the top one tightened down fairly snug, move to the bottom one, get it fairly snug, and then just go back up a little bit more, maybe a quarter turn on both to really lock that in. So that should be holding your tail boom in place, and there should be no more movement either back and forth or side to side. And then just go back in real quick and double check everything. Double check your belt tension. Make sure it didn't get pulled too tight, or that it's floppy in there again. Okay, so that feels good. And then double check your alignment. Okay, so now that we have that part completed, we can go in and take care of getting the horizontal stabilizer fin and the tail boom support brackets on. So I'm going to start out by getting things kind of prepped up with the support brackets. So I'm just going to pull off these screws on both sides, and you should have these guys here somewhere in your kit. Whoops, my end just fell off. Okay, so some of yours may be loose, and some of them may be on there. Generally, these things come already pre-glued. If yours is loose like that, you're going to want to glue it into place before we continue. And I'll show you the glue that I use for this, and I'll tell you why I use it. Alright, so this is the stuff that I have bought previously for this sort of an application. It's Loctite Stick and Steel Extreme Conditions. The reason I picked it, and I've used previously CA glue, and I know a lot of people use CA just to lock these ends on. The problem with CA is it dries really hard, and it doesn't handle vibration very well. And this is a very potentially vibrating component here. So what I decided to try was this stuff, which is specifically designed to handle vibration. So vibration and impact resistant. Works on hard and soft materials. It's kind of an epoxy type thing that has a slower bond than CA, and has a little bit of flexibility to be able to sustain a little bit of vibration. So this is Stick and Steel Extreme Conditions. I got it at Target. So anyway, I thought I would use this. The open time is 5 minutes and the cure time is 24 hours. So you don't want to like put this on and then go fly your heli, because it's not going to be cured up. But that's kind of generally the deal, which is why the two-part epoxies tend to work very well for applications like this, is because you know, it takes a longer time to cure and really settles in. So, but anyway, what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of this and find my loose one, and I'm going to just put some in the tip there, and then slide this over, and that should work on building a seal. And then I've got a little bit of time here because it's not gonna set immediately like a CA would, and you can see how well that is coated in there. And then so what I can do is, while that is setting up, is work on getting everything lined. So that's kind of an important step here, is getting everything adjusted. Because what I don't want to do is have it crooked. So get it set up as good as you can. Make sure that your lengths of your rods are the same as that glue dries, because you never know if one of those didn't get pressed on all the way at the factory and one's a little bit longer than the other, you'll have a little bit of a tweak to your tail. So as that thing is starting to set, just make sure that everything is in line, and it is. And I'm going to give it just a few minutes to kind of get the initial cure. But while that's happening, I'll work on finding my screws. So the manual calls for a 12 millimeter screw and a washer that's going to go to mount these tail support braces on. I don't seem to have, again, I feel like I'm missing an entire bag of screws and washers. I don't seem to have a 12 millimeter. I've got this 10 millimeter. So I'm going to use it. I think it'll be fine. And then basically thread that through there. It kind of wants to thread through this bracket. So I'm going to loosen it all the way up. Press it firm against the heli. As I get it, that way it's threading through both the heli and the bracket, and the brace. And then once I get it tightened down, so swapping it around to the other side, same thing, washer, and I'm kind of threading it through this brace, and then pushing it tight up against the heli to get started, because you're basically threading it through both. Alright, so now what you end up with is this, where you have the braces coming out of the back end and just pointed in the general direction of where you're going to mount them in the on the boom itself. Now for the boom part, basically what you want to do is just get them aligned with the side here. These screws that I took out, put some thread lock on them. And just screw them down. Not quite. I'm going to back it off just a little bit. I don't want it quite all the way there yet. I want to make sure I get the other one in okay. And there we go. Both of those are tight. Just push this forward, keeping in mind this is still loose, not tightened down, but it's being held into place now by the support booms. So just take a look at it, make sure everything looks okay. And you'll see here, let me loosen this up just a touch. So I've got it just a little bit loose, not quite locked down. While I sort out the final adjustment of this piece, I'm going to go ahead and remove these screws here on the top and put in my horizontal stabilizer. And this is, could be backwards. You can do this part first. I didn't. Doesn't really matter. And then basically again thread lock. And then you're going to put the thread lock on your screw through there, and then set it down on top. Just get a couple threads started. Thread lock on the other one. Get it run through and then down into the bottom half of the bracket. Now as you start getting it close to being tightened, you want to make sure that you tighten it evenly. So as you're tightening this, you want to try and get an equal amount of light on both sides. So what I'll generally do is tighten it a little bit at a time. You know, put some turns on this side, put some turns on that side, and just kind of go back and forth and get it cinched down fairly evenly. And this is kind of hard to do on camera, but okay, when you start getting really close, then you want to look at your alignment of that vertical stabilizer. See how that's canted? You want to adjust that. Now there's a chance you're going to take your vertical fin out of adjustment when you do that. So you're going to have to kind of work it back and forth, maybe loosen this up just a little bit and get everything final adjusted. So this is really hard to do on camera. So let me dump the camera and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Alright, took a little bit of tweaking, but I finally got it set where I want it. You can see the horizontal stabilizer is fairly well level with the top plane of the heli, and then the vertical stabilizer is in line with the vertical plane of the heli. And these two should be perpendicular to one another, so like a half a cross right there. And that's kind of what you're looking for. Remember to double check your belt tension through this whole process. You could screw up belt tension if you're messing with this. So in the end, you've got these two tightened down, runs up to these two tightened down, these two tightened down on the top, and that holds everything in place. Make sure you've still got your two servo mounting brackets up front, as well as one of your control rod guides, and then the other control rod guide is in the back. So that's it. I'm going to call this a completed tail assembly. Just to summarize what we've done, we put in the tail block, the transmission block. Basically, we added some green retaining Loctite to the inner race of the bearings, used a little shoe goo or goop for the outer race of the bearings, got our belt fed through, got all our stuff on, made sure our belt was in the right orientation, wasn't all twisted up in there, and then twisted the quarter turn from the left to the right to get it aligned so that we could put our tail case on. And we basically got the entire tail assembly put together, got our stabilizers on, and then got our support braces on. So that's it. I will say that's tail. Now we can work on getting the tail servo mounted, and then the control arm back to the pitch slider, and we'll be coming along. Then we'll start working on getting the main gear installed and the motor, setting pinion mesh, getting the head dropped in, and it won't be very long. We'll be flying this bad boy. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.